You're listening to In the Spotlight with Jill Nicolini on Business Talk Radio, where we take your business to the next level. And welcome back to the show. Today we are joined by Jason Bone here. He's the COO and Clinical Director of Adolescence from the Anxiety Center at Renew Counseling Center, based out of Kansas City. I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you as well. Jason, please say hello and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, audience. I'm Jason Bone. I've worked with adolescents for somewhere around 30 plus years now, since I was one. I run an intensive outpatient program for young people struggling with, and their families struggling with, anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts and school avoidance and lots of stuff that seems to be escalating in society right now.
Well, thank you. Let's just point out this right now. AnxietyCenterKC.com. That's your website, right? And you say you're a Gen X, postmodern, question everything person who happens to be blessed with parents who took in orphans, praying for food, answer their callings, and sacrifice for their children, knew they were loved. Can you share a little bit about this, if you don't mind, with us?
Sure. I raised in a generation where institutions seem to be falling down. We can start seeing the repercussions in storming the Capitol yesterday. I mean, nobody has a lot of trust, and I don't either. I just happen to have found, the faith and stability that came with a good family that just, and this is part of what we tell our families. My family lived by their values, things that mattered to them. They actually acted on and did, and that was an example for me and taught me how to do that. And my older sister was adopted, and I've now adopted a couple of young people out of the foster care system. And most of my career has either been directly with adolescents or somehow connected to the child welfare system at local and national levels. So I have a lot of experience in that area and the strugglings that come with attachment. And quite frankly, anxiety and depression in adolescents today looks a lot like that because they keep pulling away from their families.
Oh, wow. And just to confirm, you established this, the Renew Counseling. That was with your wife as well, right?
Yes, I have an amazing wife. She is a counselor in her own right, started Renew Counseling 13, 14 years ago. I got to marry into it, and she's just done a great job. We also, here at the center at Renew Counseling, run an adult program for adults struggling with anxiety, intensive outpatient 3 nights a week kind of thing. We also have a whole group of amazing individual therapists who work with couples and families and individuals.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that and for doing what you do. Once again, I want to point out AnxietyCenterKC.com is your website. And also, I know we're opening up the phone lines today, 631-627-1840 if you have any questions. In the meantime, what's your area of focus for the day?
So I'd like to talk about avoidance and kind of the dark side of avoidance, because we're seeing more and more of that as we go. You hear about school avoidance. You hear about, young people who never leave the basement. And so I'd like to talk a little bit more about avoidance. Should I just kind of keep going with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Great. And so the technical definition of avoidance is you don't want to engage in some situation, activity, or behavior. And incredibly enough, avoidance is a good thing when you avoid stepping out into a street with cars, or you avoid scam artists, when you avoid unhealthy friends, those kind of things. But, if you avoid work, if you avoid school, you avoid skipping classes, those are pretty obvious examples of where avoidance is not a good idea. What we see in young people a lot is that something comes up, or they have a biological predisposition towards anxiety or depression, and they start avoiding, feelings inside. Well, I don't feel like doing that, and then it becomes a cycle. And it makes everything harder. If you're struggling with depression, anxiety, ADHD, it makes everything harder, including the stuff we enjoy. And so at some point you avoid something you enjoy doing. Maybe my friends are going biking I usually enjoy biking with them, but at this point, I just don't have the energy, or I don't feel like I have the energy for it.
Yeah.
So from a depressive place, and then so you reduce your physical activity.
And if
Doesn't
you don't want me
go.
interrupting at this point, we can go back to avoidance. We have a call coming in. Welcome to the show here live on the line with Jason. Who's this?
Hi, this is Kathy. So I have a question for Jason.
Sure, guys.
I seem to have very high anxiety around my boyfriend. I'm not sure if I should see a doctor or not. I've never been treated for this before, so I'm uncertain and not really into taking medication. I noticed that my anxiety spikes when I'm around him. Is there anything I can do?
Uh, are you a parent? Are you
Yes,
are,
hello?
are you an adolescent? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay. Um, well, part of what we're going to get to today is bold, and I'm actually kind of entitling this series "Bold Parenting." But the bold process works for you as an individual. It works for parents. It works for young people. So actually teaching parents to teach this process to their young people. And so bold stands for breathing deeply and slowing down. So when I'm thinking about you and engagement with your boyfriend, you're feeling that anxiety come up, can you breathe deeply and slow yourself down? And once you've slowed yourself down, you're not reacting from an emotional place or from a threatened place. So the anxiety is kind of masking your real deeper core feelings. And so once you're breathing and you've slowed yourself down kind of into a wise mind place, in my language, you start observing your thoughts and feelings. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking I'm not good enough, or I'm scared of commitment, or am I thinking I'm not sure if he really likes me? But then what are the feelings associated with that? I'm uncomfortable. I don't understand. But once you've slowed down, so you breathe, the B, then you observe your thoughts and feelings, and just to kind of get yourself nicely grounded in what you're really thinking and feeling. At that point, you then need to listen to your values. All right. So that's the L, BOL. Listening to your values is, what do you want? What are you hoping to get out of a relationship? Is it long term? Is it short term? Is it you want family and he doesn't want family? Those kind of things. And so if your values are saying, hey, this relationship is really important, but it's kind of scaring me a little bit that it's serious or that we're not moving forward with it, you say, okay, well, he's important to me. I'm wanting to be in this situation. I want to have a long-term relationship. Those are your values. So not acting out of the threat or the fear of anxiety, but listening to your values. And then you decide to act. Okay. And so if your values say, hey, I really like all these things about this guy, and I want to see if this is going to be a serious, meaningful relationship, you decide to act on those feelings instead of the anxious feelings. To throw in whether you need to go see a doctor or not, is if it generalizes to your whole, like, are you nervous when you go to work? Are you nervous when you hang out with your friends? If it's localized to just your boyfriend, then it's likely something you need to figure out about that relationship. And I'm not the relationship guru, but bold is a good way to think about it. Breathe deeply and slow down. Observe your thoughts and feelings. Listen to your values. Decide on actions, and then take them. Actually do them.
Okay, thank you so much for answering my question, Jason.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for the call. Well, thank you for the advice as well, I should say to you. So we were on number one there, avoidance. You want to continue that conversation?
I do. Again, as I was saying, both depression and anxiety make everything harder. I mean, she just pointed out that being in a relationship is harder if you're feeling anxious. And so she could start choosing to avoid the feelings that are inside, and that gets masked by anxiety. Or she could start avoiding or resenting the boyfriend. But so both anxiety and depression make things harder. unfortunately, and especially in adolescence, both cycles can join forces and become even more challenging to disrupt what's going on. And that impacts motivation, self-care, all relationships. And it becomes harder to determine the underlying causes. Talk to lots of parents, and they like, what caused this? What did we do? And it's hard to tell sometimes with the current what behaviors you're seeing right now, and it makes it harder to decide how to support that change through skill development, therapy, and/or medication, or even, more like just bringing some balance to the young person. Depression. The cycle of depression is that they reduce their activities. You just don't have the energy to do much. So you move into survival. Hopefully you're feeding yourself, but there's this loss of things that used to give you fun, pleasure, vitality, and a sense of achievement. So you don't do that once. That actually worsens how you feel because you're not living up to who you want to be as a person. That worsening of how you feel adds in to the depression, which leads to reduced physical activity, total activity. And you just have this cycle just around depression that ends up leading you to less and less activities in your life. Anxiety works in very much the same way, has the same kind of cycle. When people become anxious, their advisor, which is kind of our inner thoughts, what we tell ourselves, it's supposed to be good advice to either keep us safe or comfortable, but it's not supposed to be like a dictator telling us to do whatever we're supposed to do. So that advisor recommends when you're anxious, recommends you avoid places and situations where your brain, your advisor predicts that anxiety will occur. All right. So this isn't actually like I'm in a place that's making me anxious, which the young lady talking about being with her boyfriend makes her anxious. This is predicting that school or having to interact with friends or having to turn these assignments in will bring anxiety. So I want to avoid that. The avoidance adds to the problems because although they may feel less anxious in the short term, the long-term behavior maintains and worsens. So the anxiety cycle becomes anxiety, avoid scary things, reduced activity, increasingly restricted life, and undermining your confidence. I am now afraid to go to school. All right. Now I feel bad about myself for not going to school. So it worsens how I feel. The worsening of how I feel adds into the anxiety. Does that make sense how both anxiety and depression separately have kind of the same cycle going on?
Yeah. I can see, absolutely very similar in a sense at some point. Okay, I see it. Thank you.
Yeah. And so when they come together, it ends up feeling a lot like how you train fleas for a flea circus. I don't know if you even knew flea circus existed. This is a real thing that used to happen 1800s, early 1900s. And the way the fleas were trained is you would catch this jar of them, you'd put the lid on it, and if you know anything about fleas, they can jump huge amounts, all directions. They're very strong comparatively. But once they were put in the jar, they would hit the lid a couple of times, and they would learn that hurts. That's not a good idea. And eventually, they would only jump to just within almost touching the lid, but not enough to bang their heads into it. Once you have the fleas jumping that high and not jumping anymore, not bumping into things, you can literally pour them out, and they will never again in their life jump higher than that. And so you now have them controlled.
Call coming in. Stand by. Welcome to Business Talk Radio. You're live on the line. Who's this?
Good afternoon. My name is Harry. How are you today?
Good. Hi. How are you? Ask any questions you may have.
Well, you know what? I do have a question for you. I was thinking about it. I got bored at night, and I found myself binge eating. And I don't really know how to stop. I was wondering what kind of advice you have for me to help me control myself.
Sure. I don't know if you were listening earlier, but I'm gonna kind of reiterate it because I think the bold process, again, you're getting bored. So at that point, you're not really anxious, getting anxious or anything, but you're clearly, you recognize that you're feeling that. So you kind of breathe deeply and slow down. Because here's the point: you're you're moving into your emotion mind as you get bored. And in your emotion mind, you're just going to do whatever makes you feel comfortable, whatever kind of brings a little bit of happiness into that moment. But if you think about your breath as a ship's anchor, it can help you stay where you want to stay, even when, you know, that cereal or ice cream or cold pizza is just seems to be like calling your name. And so breathing slows us down, moves us out of our emotional mind and hopefully into wise mind, where we make decisions both based on what we feel and our rational mind of what really should make sense and keep us healthier, which might mean not having an extra meal right before you go to bed. So you're breathing and you're slowing down. You're observing your thoughts and feelings. You know, so once you've anchored yourself, you're like, well, am I really bored? And if I am really bored, maybe I should look for a challenge or something that interests me. What am I really feeling? Wow, I don't necessarily want to go to bed tonight because I'm nervous about that. Or actually, what's going on here is I don't want to deal with tomorrow because today wasn't great. I don't know what picks may throw into that for you, but if you observe your thoughts and feelings, you can unhook from that voice in your head that's saying, go get food, go get food. You know, kind of that's your advisor voice. So you've breathed deeply, you're observing your thoughts and feelings, recognizing, you know, what's going on with you, your kind of your core, and overeating, any kind of eating is trying to take control. So you're bored, you're going to try and take control by eating some food. And at this point, if you're observing this and you can recognize the feelings, you start listening to your values. Do you want to continue to put on weight? Do you want to kind of have the energy drain that comes with that? Or maybe it's eating something that keeps you awake later and doesn't let you face. And so you listen to those values. What kind of person do you want to be? Well, I don't want to be bored. I actually want to find a challenge. So I'm going to start a new hobby, whatever that might be, in the night when I have free time, or I'm going to go find a show that's not just mind numbing, and see if I can learn something. So what are your values? You know, your valuer says, well, I really like adventure. Maybe I should be working out now instead of eating and being bored. I don't quite know. And it's not really my place to decide your values, but as you think about what matters to you, what kind of person you want to be in your life, then you decide on actions. Okay, so I want to actually be in shape and have lots of energy. All right, well, you decide on that. It's now 7:30. I'm starting that bored phase. Well, I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go, maybe even just limiting it to a yoga routine so you go to bed. But I'm going to go work out. I'm going to join a basketball league. So you listen to those values, and that's what you want to do. And then you decide on actions, and you do them. And so that's where, okay, I need to be bold right now. I need to breathe deeply. I need to stop and recognize this boredom feeling, thought. I need to observe it. I need to decide, is that the person I want to be? So listen to your values, listen to what matters to you, and then decide on actions, and then just do them. And maybe it's maybe I should just go to bed now instead of getting a bowl of cereal. And dude, I so feel you, because that's I get done with I have 4 children, and by the time I get them all to bed, I can just feel myself revving up. And so I'm actually practicing this routine myself so I can start losing weight. And luckily got to the gym myself for some self-care this morning. So feeling better right now. I hope that was helpful. So bold will help you control yourself, if you use it properly.
Definitely did. Yes, you gave me a lot to think about there, and I was planning what I'm going to be doing as you were speaking. So thank you very much. It was very helpful. Thank you.
You bet. Good luck.
And at this time, we have to take a quick commercial break. Actually, we'll skip it since we have an issue getting in touch with you before we are running late. So we still have 5 minutes left in the show. So let's continue. I want you to finish your thoughts that you were saying before.
Okay, yeah. Again, to go back to the flea circus, once you've trained these fleas, and they've in psychological jargon, they've got a learned helplessness. All right, they just, even though the whole environment has changed, because they're dumped out there free, they could do whatever else. They've just learned that there wasn't any benefit to that. I kept slamming my head. And so now I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to stay at the same level. I'm not going to go very far. And this is, quite frankly, what struggling teenagers end up looking like. I get talked all the time about, they don't have any motivation to do schoolwork. They don't have any motivation to do the things they find. And they've put themselves into this depression, anxiety cycle of unhelpful behaviors. So not doing anything is an unhelpful behavior. Smoking weed just to cover up your numbness is an unhealthy behavior. Watching 3 hours of TikTok in the middle of the night is an unhelpful behavior. Incredibly enough, those, if they're unhelpful behaviors, leads to new or worsened problems.
And we have another call coming in. Hi, welcome to the show. Please ask any questions you may have.
Hi, I was wondering, my daughter seems to have anxiety when she goes to school. I didn't really notice it until COVID hit and she was being school virtually, but I see a difference in her now. I was wondering how I can treat it, because she'll eventually be going to school in person again, but I don't want it to get worse.
Yeah, I am, and hopefully you've been listening. I'm going to finish up because this really fits in with this cycle. You literally described the anxiety cycle, and then it's probably going to be slipping into the depression anxiety cycle, which I was just talking about. Is so she gets anxiety, she's scared of it right now. COVID, she's kind of not getting those fears. I'm seeing a lot of young people who they just go from, I was actually scared to enter the building, to now I'm just online. Well, I'm scared to turn on the camera and to be present with my class in any way, shape, and form, or I'm afraid of the work. And so it's a really vicious cycle, because COVID has all by itself done part of the depression system, in that we've got reduced activities. All of us are not getting to do a lot of the things we used to do. So it's literally leading to some depression, because I can't do the things that were good self-care. I don't get the benefits of actually having friends around me when I go to school. So what's this whole being online thing? It doesn't sound like she's gotten to that point of learned helplessness that she's, really not doing anything. And you can see this trajectory towards being somebody that just plays video games in the basement, which I've actually worked with. You're going to have to find ways to challenge her. And this is, again, this is what I teach my families. We're doing 3 hours on the BOLD process this afternoon with my intensive outpatient. And that's, can you teach her some mindful action skills? So breathing deeply. One of those is square breathing, which is a really, really good technique. So as she's getting anxious, can you do square breathing? And square breathing is this really simple process of a square has 4 sides, so it has 4 steps. So you breathe in really slowly to a count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You hold that breath for a count of 3 or 4. Then you breathe out. So you breathe out really slowly for a count of 3 or 4, and then you hold it out for 3 or 4. And you do that maybe a minute. You don't worry about it too much, but you go through the cycle 3 or 4 times. So square breathing is a way to breathe deeply and slow down, which is the first part of the BOLD process. At that point, you want to be able to talk with her, and you've got this opportunity. She's at home a lot. Is what's she thinking and feeling when she's getting anxious? You've slowed her down, so the anxiety isn't in control. What is she afraid of? Which part of this process? Is it social interaction? Is it the academic work? Is she doesn't feel like she's capable? Is her advisor voice saying, you know what, you're not good enough? You're not, I don't know, you're not worthy of being at school. Nobody likes you. These are really internal triggers that are really invisible and hard to recognize when you see the defense mechanisms or the actions of not wanting to do something come out. Then you talk to her about her values, and we work really hard on values and having young people. What matters to you? What are you attempting to accomplish? Do you want to get to dance class? Or we've got a young lady right now where she wants to be in the play, and the value of being in the play pushed her to complete all this work that didn't get finished at the end of last semester, because she was really overly anxious about the whole thing and somewhat overwhelmed. So then, once she's figured out that value of being in the play is big enough for her to struggle through some of the work to allow you to set up a step-by-step plan to move her forward. Some of these values, since it hasn't gone extreme, is like, are we Are we being adventurous in life? Are we serving? Are we still interacting with people and keeping up our people skills kind of thing? So whatever those values are, what matters to her, what matters to your family, need to be talked and thought about. And then you talk about, well, what are the actions? If you're going to live up to that value of education or live up to that value of being in a play, what do you have to do to get there? Well, I actually have to turn on the camera and zoom in. I actually have to, and you got to keep putting those challenges in front of her, so that she doesn't fall into that cycle of less activity, meaning worsening of symptoms, meaning it increases the anxiety, meaning it's going to be harder to move back into school next, whenever that happens to open up.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we must go. Would you mind giving us your best form of contact, please?
Sure. You can go to, we've actually created a website for this, boldparenting.online. That's the best way to find these materials, more information about what I'm talking about, if that was helpful. I can be reached at jason@anxietycenterkc.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it. And everyone else, stay tuned. More of the show is on the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening